I was a live-in nanny for my best friend's autistic son, but when I tried to quit, I uncovered her husband's affairs with young coworkers. I, 31F, have been helping watch my nephew since he was born. His mother, Amelia, 32F, and I have been best friends for over 10 years. We met in college when we were assigned as roommates and instantly clicked. She helped me through some really dark times, especially when my mom passed away during our junior year. After graduation, we stayed close even when I moved back home to care for my alcoholic father. Living with my dad was a nightmare. He would drink away his disability checks and scream at me for hours about how I was just like my mom, always trying to control him. I was working 2 jobs just to keep the lights on while trying to hide his drunk driving from the neighbors. I felt trapped. When Amelia found out she was pregnant, she and her husband Frank, 35M, immediately offered me a way out. They had a spare room in their house and needed someone trustworthy to help with childcare once the baby arrived. It seemed perfect. I'd get away from my dad, and they'd get reliable help. Frank even helped me move my stuff out while my dad was passed out. In the beginning, it was great. Tommy was an easy baby, and I loved being part of their family. But things got complicated when he was diagnosed with autism at age 2. He needs strict routines, gets overwhelmed easily, and has frequent meltdowns. I've learned to handle these situations, but it's emotionally draining. He also has severe food allergies, which means carefully monitoring everything he eats. Amelia has an autoimmune disease that makes her extremely vulnerable to infections. Our arrangement is that I handle Tommy completely if anyone is sick. Over the past 5 years, I've taken care of him through countless colds, flu episodes, and stomach bugs, often while being sick myself. There's no sick days or breaks. My current schedule is brutal. I stay at their house from Sunday night through Thursday night. I wake up at 6 a.m. to get Tommy ready, do his homeschooling from 9 to 2, which requires constant attention as he gets distracted easily, handle his therapy exercises, prepare his special meals, and manage his evening routine until bedtime at 8 p.m. I also try to help with housework when I can. This schedule has destroyed my personal life. Last year, I was dating this amazing woman named Rachel. She was understanding at first but eventually got tired of me canceling plans because Tommy was having a bad day or Amelia needed me to stay late. My attempt at dating before that ended similarly. I've missed friends' weddings, family events, and countless social opportunities because of my commitments to Tommy. A year ago, Amelia and Frank moved to a bigger rental house, but I stayed living with my roommate Jake, 40M, who owns the house. During a period when I wasn't watching Tommy as much due to their vacation, Jake made comments about me not contributing enough since my childcare arrangement was tied to my rent-free status. He later said he didn't mean anything by it, but those words stuck with me. I've been terrified of losing my housing ever since. This past year hit me especially hard. Beyond my failed relationships, I had a huge falling out with my sister over money I lent her for her business. My dad passed away, although that was almost a relief, and the increasing demands of Tommy's care became overwhelming. I love that kid like my own nephew, but I'm burning out. Last week was my breaking point. Tommy and I both caught a nasty cold. After 3 nights of barely sleeping while caring for him, handling his 2 a.m. meltdowns, cleaning up when he got sick, all while feeling awful myself, I just snapped. When Amelia came home from work, I blurted out that I couldn't do this anymore. She completely lost it. She said I was betraying her trust and abandoning Tommy when he needs stability the most. She reminded me how they rescued me from my dad and gave me a home. Frank joined in, saying they would have never bought their new house or taken certain jobs if they knew I would quit. Apparently, they're planning to buy a place soon and my timing is terrible. I feel awful about the timing, but I don't think it's entirely my fault. Over these 5 years, they never bothered to look for backup childcare options or develop any contingency plans. Everything fell on me. I've given up my entire life to help raise their son. I told them I'd stay until end of May or mid-June so Tommy can finish the school year, but Amelia's barely speaking to me now. Frank keeps making snide comments about loyalty and family obligations. Ida for quitting? I love Tommy, but I need my life back. I'm turning 32 soon and I've put everything on hold, relationships, career growth, even starting my own family, to help raise someone else's child. I feel selfish for wanting out, but I'm completely drained. Edit. Some people are asking about payment. Yes, I do get paid hourly for the childcare in addition to my rent-free housing. The pay is decent but below market rate for someone with my experience, especially considering the special needs aspect. This was fine when it started, but with current living costs, it's not sustainable. Update 1: Things have gotten significantly worse since my last post. After our initial confrontation about me quitting, Amelia started interviewing potential nannies but would constantly compare them to me. She'd text me multiple times daily complaining that one candidate didn't understand Tommy's routines, another wasn't patient enough, and a third didn't have special needs experience. She kept emphasizing how much Tommy was struggling with the idea of me leaving, which only added to my guilt. The tension in the house became unbearable. Frank started working late almost every night, claiming he had important projects to finish before their house purchase. Amelia was stressed about managing Tommy's routines alone in the evenings. I tried maintaining our usual schedule, but things felt strained and awkward. Last Wednesday changed everything. I was helping Tommy with his math exercises in the living room when I heard Frank's voice from the backyard. He was speaking in hushed tones, which was unusual since his work calls were typically loud and professional. I clearly heard him say, "I miss you too and we'll figure something out soon, baby." At first, I tried convincing myself it was a call with his sister or mother, but something felt off. The next morning, while helping Tommy get ready for breakfast, I noticed Frank's iPad on the kitchen counter lighting up with notifications. I usually ignore his devices, but a message preview caught my eye. It was from someone named Sarah. Work and read last night was amazing, followed by heart emojis. My hands shook as I quickly took photos with my phone, feeling like the worst person for invading his privacy but knowing I needed proof. More messages kept coming. "Can't wait for lunch today and still thinking about you." I felt sick to my stomach. Here was Amelia, worried about finding the perfect nanny for Tommy, while her husband was apparently having an affair. I spent the whole day debating what to do. Tommy was extra sensitive that day, probably picking up on my anxiety, and had 3 meltdowns before lunch. By the time Amelia came home from work, I was emotionally exhausted but knew I had to tell her. I asked to speak with her privately after Tommy's bedtime. Though she was still cold towards me about quitting, she agreed. When I showed her the photos and mentioned the phone call, she initially laughed it off, saying I must have misunderstood. But as she read more messages, her hands started shaking. She broke down completely, revealing that Frank had been emotionally distant for months. He'd stopped joining their weekly family movie nights, claiming work stress. He'd been protective of his phone, taking it even to the bathroom. She'd noticed changes but convinced herself it was anxiety about buying a new house. That night, after I took Tommy to my room to shield him from any conflict, Amelia confronted Frank. He tried every excuse in the book, claiming Sarah was just a friend, saying I was making things up because I was angry about their reaction to me quitting, even suggesting Amelia was paranoid due to her illness. But when Amelia mentioned specific details from the messages, he finally cracked. The truth was devastating. He'd been having a 6-month affair with Sarah, a 25-year-old junior associate at his firm. They'd started as lunch dates, then moved to late-night meetings, and eventually hotel encounters. He'd even used their joint account to buy her expensive gifts, disguising them as client entertainment expenses. Amelia kicked him out that night. She was surprisingly calm as she packed his essentials in a duffel bag, but I could see she was in shock. Frank has been calling and texting constantly since then, switching between begging for another chance and blaming Amelia for being too focused on Tommy's needs and neglecting him. Tommy doesn't understand why Daddy isn't coming home. He had a massive meltdown yesterday when Frank's car wasn't in the driveway after school. How do you explain adult betrayal to a special needs 5-year-old who thrives on routine? I've decided to postpone my departure until August to help them through this transition. My dating life and personal goals can wait a few more months. Right now, Amelia and Tommy need stability. The irony isn't lost on me that I discovered this while trying to leave, but maybe everything happens for a reason. Amelia says I did her a favor by showing her the truth, but I still feel terrible. If I hadn't been planning to quit, would I have paid such close attention to Frank's behavior? Sometimes doing the right thing feels awful. Edit. Thank you for all the supportive comments. To those asking, yes, I've helped Amelia document everything for her lawyer. She has copies of all the messages and bank statements showing the hotel charges and gifts. She's meeting with a divorce attorney next week. Update 2: everything escalated dramatically last week. While I was helping Tommy with his after-school snack, someone started banging on the front door. It was Sarah, Frank's affair partner, and she was hysterical. Amelia was still at work, and I almost didn't open the door, but Sarah kept yelling that she needed to tell us something important. When I finally let her in, keeping Tommy occupied in his room with his iPad, she broke down completely. Between sobs, she revealed that Frank had been living a double life at work. He had told everyone, including her, that he was divorced and a single dad struggling to raise an autistic child. He even showed her fake divorce papers and custody agreements. Sarah only discovered the truth by accident. She overheard 2 longtime employees discussing Frank's upcoming house purchase with his wife. When she confronted him, he spun an elaborate story about how he was unhappy in his marriage and planning to leave Amelia soon. He claimed he was only staying for Tommy's sake and needed to secure the new house first to ensure stable custody arrangements. But that wasn't even the worst part. Sarah had started talking to other women at the company after discovering Frank's lies. She showed us message threads from 3 other junior employees, all in their mid-20s, all recently hired, and all pursued by Frank within their first months at the firm. His pattern was clear: he would offer to mentor them, slowly build trust, then start an inappropriate relationship. 2 of these women had ended things once they realized he was married, but had been too scared to report him due to his senior position. Sarah had screenshots of everything: the conversations where he claimed to be divorced, his promises to leave Amelia, even receipts from gifts he bought them using the joint account he shared with Amelia. When Amelia came home and saw Sarah in her kitchen, she nearly lost it. But after hearing everything and seeing the evidence, she broke down and hugged Sarah. Both women had been manipulated by the same man, believing completely different versions of him. The next day, Amelia's lawyer helped her report everything to Frank's company's HR department. They launched an immediate investigation and suspended him. Within a week, he was fired. Several other women came forward once they knew they'd be protected. Frank completely unraveled after losing his job. He started showing up at the house at random times, begging to talk to Amelia. Last night, he came by drunk at 11 p.m., pounding on doors and windows, yelling about how we'd ruined his life. Tommy woke up terrified and had a massive meltdown. It took hours to calm him down, and he couldn't go to school today because of anxiety. The neighbors called the police, and Frank was arrested for disorderly conduct. Amelia immediately filed for a temporary restraining order. I helped her install security cameras and change all the locks. We also created a safety plan with Tommy's therapist to help him process what's happening. Surprisingly, Frank's parents have been incredibly supportive of Amelia. They came over yesterday, mortified by their son's behavior. Apparently, they had no idea about any of this and were horrified to learn how he'd been living. They'd offered to help Amelia financially since Frank lost his job, and they connected her with an amazing nanny through their church, a retired special education teacher who specializes in working with autistic children. Tommy really likes the new nanny, which is a huge relief. She understands his routines and has already suggested some helpful techniques for managing his anxiety. I'm still here helping with the transition, but it's such a comfort knowing Amelia will have proper support when I leave. Sometimes I feel guilty about how my decision to quit unleashed all this chaos. But then I remember that Frank's lies would have come out eventually, probably in an even more devastating way. At least now Amelia can start rebuilding her life with proper support, both legal and emotional. The divorce proceedings are moving quickly given all the evidence. Frank's behavior since losing his job has only strengthened Amelia's case for primary custody. I never expected any of this when I decided to quit, but sometimes you have to break things completely before they can be rebuilt properly. Update 3: The dust has finally settled, and so much has changed in the past few months. Amelia's divorce was finalized last week, much faster than usual due to the overwhelming evidence of Frank's misconduct. She got primary custody of Tommy, with Frank only getting supervised visits every other weekend at his parents' house. The judge was especially concerned about his recent erratic behavior and the multiple HR complaints. Life has taken some interesting turns for everyone involved. Frank moved in with Sarah after losing his job, claiming they were meant to be together. That fantasy lasted exactly 3 weeks until she caught him messaging a waitress from their local bar. She kicked him out, and he's now living in his parents' basement while attending court-mandated counseling as part of the custody agreement. The most positive change has been Tommy's progress. Though he still asks about his dad, especially during his routine times, he's bonded incredibly well with his new nanny. She's helped identify some learning strategies that really work for him, and his meltdowns have decreased significantly. He started a new therapy program that Amelia's insurance finally approved, and the difference is noticeable. I officially stopped working for Amelia last month. The transition was smoother than any of us expected, largely thanks to the new nanny's experience. Amelia and I have actually grown closer now that our relationship isn't complicated by employment. We have regular coffee dates where we can just be friends without discussing schedules or responsibilities. Using my savings from living rent-free, I found a cute apartment closer to downtown. Jake was understanding about me moving out and even helped me find some furniture. I'm dating someone new, an elementary school teacher who completely understands my bond with Tommy and respects that I still want to be part of his life, just not as his primary caregiver. Yesterday brought an unexpected twist when Frank tried reaching out through a fake Instagram account. He sent me a long message about how he misses our family dynamic and asked if I could help him get back in Amelia's good graces. He claimed he'd changed and realized what he'd lost. I took screenshots, blocked him, and sent everything to Amelia's lawyer. Amelia has been thriving since the divorce. She got a promotion at work now that she's not constantly managing Frank's crises. She joined a support group for single parents of special needs children and has made some close friends there. They have regular playdates where the kids can be themselves without judgment. Tommy started kindergarten this fall. His new teacher says he's making remarkable progress, especially in social interactions. The routine changes were challenging at first, but the preparation we all did over the summer really helped. His new nanny even created a picture schedule to help him understand the changes. Looking back, I'm grateful I found the courage to speak up about needing to quit. If I hadn't, Frank's deception might have continued for years, causing even more damage. While the whole situation was messy and painful, it led to better outcomes for everyone who deserved them. Amelia told me yesterday that she's actually happier now. She no longer has to walk on eggshells in her own home or worry about Frank's lies. She can focus on Tommy and her own growth. Sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the best outcomes, even if the path there is messy. I have absolutely no regrets about any of it. Frank's parents still invite me to family gatherings since they consider me Tommy's aunt. They recently mentioned that Frank's been on dating apps claiming he's 28, he's 35, and never married. Some people never change, but that's not our problem anymore.